The day I became the first millionaire in my family didn't feel like a victory. It felt like the beginning of a question I wasn't ready to answer. The money arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. After more than a decade of long nights, failed ideas, and sacrifices nobody really understood, I sold the software company I'd built from my spare bedroom. The final payment landed in my account just after 9 a.m. I stared at the number on my phone for a long time. Then I locked the screen and walked outside. My father was lying underneath my car in the driveway. It's 66 years old. He still changed his own oil. "Got a funnel?" he called from beneath the vehicle. I smiled. That was my father. Not, "Congratulations." Not, "How much did you make?" Just, "Got a funnel?" I found one in the garage and handed it to him. For a few minutes, life felt exactly the same. Then my phone vibrated, a text from my older brother. "Heard you sold. We should talk." I froze. Nobody knew. Not my mother, not my brother, not anyone. So how did he know? I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me, a strange feeling I couldn't explain, as if a secret had escaped before I ever told it. By the weekend, the entire family knew, and suddenly everyone wanted to celebrate. My mother organized a cookout, the backyard filled with folding chairs, paper plates, laughing cousins and relatives I hadn't heard from in months. At first, everything felt normal. Then the jokes started. "Don't let him near the bill. He's buying dessert. Look at Mr. Millionaire over here." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but after a while I noticed something. The jokes weren't really jokes. Every one of them carried a little weight, a little expectation, a little message hidden underneath. My aunt squeezed my shoulder. "You're going to help the family now, right?" She laughed afterward, but her eyes didn't. Across the yard, I saw my brother watching me, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't read his expression. A week later, I saw him at a car dealership. I had come in for routine service. He was standing beside a brand new luxury truck. The salesman looked excited. My brother looked determined. When he noticed me, he immediately waved me over. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said loudly. He listed the features, the horsepower, the price, especially the price, and I realized he wasn't talking to the salesman. He was talking to me. He wanted me to know he could still afford nice things. He wanted me to know he wasn't falling behind. The problem was that I knew his finances. The truck made no sense, not for his income, not for his situation. Yet there he stood, trying to prove something, not to the world, to his little brother. Driving home, I felt sad, because the man standing beside that truck wasn't the brother I remembered. The brother I remembered had once driven through a snowstorm to lend me $40 when I couldn't afford groceries. That brother never cared about appearances. That brother cared about people. But things kept getting stranger. My aunt called with an investment opportunity. A cousin wanted business advice that somehow turned into a request for money. My mother started using a new phrase, "Well, now that you can afford it." Every conversation seemed to end the same way. I hadn't changed, but everyone else's expectations had. Then my brother invited me over. He seemed nervous, almost vulnerable. The old warmth was back in his voice. We sat at his kitchen table drinking coffee. After a few minutes, he finally got to the point. He needed $40,000. He had a business opportunity, a guaranteed winner, the kind of deal that couldn't fail. As he talked, I remembered the $40 he'd given me years ago, back when I had nothing, back when he had almost nothing himself. Part of me wanted to say no. The numbers didn't make sense. The plan sounded rushed, but another part of me desperately wanted my brother back. So I agreed. His face lit up instantly, and for the first time in months, I felt hopeful. Maybe everything would be okay. Maybe money hadn't changed us after all. For several weeks, it seemed like I was right. One Sunday morning, he arrived at my house carrying coffee. He spent hours helping me fix things around the property. We laughed, talked, told old stories. At one point, he looked down from a ladder and grinned. The same grin I remembered from childhood. The same grin that used to make every problem feel smaller. standing there in the sunshine. I believed we'd found our way back to each other. I was wrong. A week later, he called. The investment had collapsed. The money was gone. $40,000. Gone. I waited for an apology. It never came. Instead, he asked for more. Another $30,000. He explained why it was necessary, why stopping now would be a mistake, why I wouldn't even notice the loss. I sat there, listening, and suddenly everything became clear. The coffee, the favors, the laughter. Had any of it been real, or had it all been part of the request? For the first time, I said no. A simple word. No. He went quiet, then ended the call. 2 days later, my mother called, and before she even said hello, I knew my brother had spoken to her. He's struggling, she said. You have plenty. I tried to explain what happened, the failed investment, the second request, but none of it mattered. In her mind, the equation was simple. He needed help. I had money. Case closed. After that, something changed inside the family. Nothing dramatic, no shouting matches, no explosive arguments, just distance, small, quiet distance. Messages took longer to answer. Conversations felt colder. I started feeling like a guest in rooms where I'd once belonged. And the loneliest part, nobody seemed to notice. Except my father. He never asked for money, never offered advice, never picked a side. Sometimes he'd simply stop by for coffee, sit at my kitchen table for an hour, tell stories, then leave. No agenda, no expectations, just presence. At the time, I didn't understand how rare that was. I would soon learn. A few months later, my father suffered a serious medical emergency. One phone call changed everything. I rushed to the hospital. My brother was already there. For the first time in a long time, neither of us cared about money. We were just two sons waiting for news about our father. When Dad finally woke up, he asked to speak with me alone. His voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. And then he told me something I never expected. Years earlier, when I was trying to launch my business, he had secretly sold a piece of land that had belonged to our family for generations. The money from that sale had helped fund my first attempt, the attempt that eventually became the company I sold. I couldn't believe it. All those years, I thought I'd built everything alone. I hadn't. The person who contributed the most had never asked for credit, never mentioned it, never reminded me, never kept score. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He smiled, because love isn't an invoice. Then he told me something I'd never forget. The people who truly love you don't keep a ledger. I sat there in silence, thinking about everything that had happened, thinking about my brother, my mother, the requests, the expectations, and the man lying in that hospital bed, the only person who had given without ever asking for anything in return. Months later, after my father recovered, his car needed an oil change. I told him I'd handle it. So I slid beneath the vehicle with a wrench and a drain pan. Halfway through the job, I stopped and laughed. For years, I thought he'd changed his own oil because it saved money. Now I understood. It was never about saving money. It was about showing up, taking care of people, doing the small things that say, "I love you," without ever needing to say the words. When I finished, I rolled out from under the car. My father was standing nearby, watching. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because some lessons are understood long before they're said, and some forms of love are so quiet that you only hear them after everything else gets loud. The phone rang early Sunday morning. I expected my brother to tell me the investment was finally taking off. Instead, his voice sounded strangely calm. "It didn't work," he said. "What do you mean?" "The deal collapsed." I closed my eyes. $40,000 had disappeared in less than a month. I waited for him to say he was sorry. He never did. Instead, he cleared his throat. "I need another 30,000. I thought he'd heard him wrong. "What?" "If we stop now, the first investment is completely wasted. We just need one more round." His words echoed in my ears. Another 30,000. No apology, no responsibility, just another request. Suddenly, every memory from the past few weeks replayed inside my head. The coffee he brought, the afternoon he spent fixing my gutters, the warm conversations, the laughter. For a painful moment, I wondered if any of it had been genuine, or if every act of kindness had simply been another step toward asking for more money. I took a deep breath. Then I said the hardest word I'd spoken in years. No. Silence filled the line. Finally, he answered, "I understand." Then he hung up. For 2 days, I heard nothing. Part of me hoped he really did understand. Then my mother called. Her voice carried disappointment before I even answered. "Why are you doing this to your brother?" I tried to explain everything. The failed investment, the missing money, the second request. She listened quietly. Then she sighed. "He's struggling," she said softly, "and you have so much now." Those 7 words hurt more than losing $40,000. She wasn't asking what had happened. She had already decided who the victim was. Somehow, my success had become evidence against me. Within days, the rest of the family seemed to know only one version of the story, the version where I had abandoned my own brother. Phone calls became shorter. Messages went unanswered. Invitations slowly disappeared. No one argued with me. They simply drifted away. Loneliness doesn't always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives through silence. Thanksgiving came a few weeks later. I almost stayed home, but family traditions are difficult to walk away from, even when they hurt. Dinner began peacefully. Everyone talked about sports, work, and the food. It felt forced, but at least it was quiet. Then my father looked across the table and smiled. "How's the new house coming along?" It was the first completely normal question anyone had asked me all evening. Before I could answer, my brother gently placed his fork on his plate. "Must be nice," he said. The room became still. He looked directly at me. "You didn't get rich." He paused. "You just stopped being one of us." No one spoke. No one defended me. My mother stared at her plate. My aunt looked away. Even the children seemed to sense something had changed. For one painful second, I questioned myself. Had I really changed, or had everyone else's expectations changed instead? I quietly thanked everyone for dinner, picked up my coat, and walked outside alone. Cold air filled my lungs as I reached my car. A moment later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my father. He stood beside me without mentioning the argument inside, without criticizing anyone, without taking sides. He simply rested a hand on the roof of my car. "Drive safe," he said. Then he smiled. "And call your mother in a few days." That was all. At the time, it seemed like an ordinary goodbye. Later, it would become one of the most meaningful conversations of my life. 3 weeks passed. Then my phone rang in the middle of the afternoon. My mother's voice was shaking. "It's your father." Everything after that became a blur. The drive, the emergency room, the bright hospital lights. When I arrived, my brother was already there. For the first time in months, neither of us mentioned money. We weren't rivals.
We weren't keeping score. We were simply two frightened sons waiting outside our father's hospital room. When the doctor finally allowed visitors, Dad asked if he could speak with me alone. He looked tired, smaller than I had ever seen him, but his smile hadn't changed. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he whispered. He took a slow breath. "When you started your business," he stopped for a moment, "I didn't lend you my savings." I looked at him, confused. "I sold 40 acres of our family land." The room fell silent. He nodded gently. "It belonged to your grandfather." My heart sank. "I sold it because I believed in you." I couldn't speak. For years, I believed I built everything by myself. I hadn't. The person who made my dream possible had never asked for recognition, never reminded me, never expected repayment. "I didn't want you carrying that weight," he said. "I wanted you building your future, not paying back your father." Tears filled my eyes. "But why keep it secret?" He smiled. "Because I've seen what money can do." He told me about his own brother. Years earlier, he'd loaned him money. The debt slowly poisoned their relationship until they barely spoke. I promised myself I'd never let money become another member of this family. He reached for my hand. "The people who truly love you never keep score." Those words changed something inside me forever. My father recovered slowly over the following months. Life didn't magically return to normal. My brother never repaid the $40,000. My mother never apologized. Some relationships remained distant, but I stopped carrying anger. Not because everyone had changed, because I finally understood who everyone truly was. One Saturday morning, my father mentioned that his old car needed an oil change. I grabbed my toolbox before he could. Half a minute later, I was lying beneath his car on a piece of flattened cardboard, the same way he had done for decades, turning the wrench, changing the oil, doing the small, ordinary work he had always done without complaint. Halfway through the job, I smiled. For years, I believed my father repaired cars because he hated wasting money. Now I understood. Every repair, every weekend project, every quiet act of service had simply been his way of saying something words never could. "I love you." When I rolled out from underneath the car, my father was standing on the porch watching me. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. Some of the deepest conversations happen in complete silence. And that's when I finally realized something money could never buy. The greatest wealth in any family isn't measured by what people give you. It's measured by what they never ask you for in return.